26th of September 1988, Salman Rushdie's novel The Satanic Verses was published in the United Kingdom. A rather controversial work that garnered some notoriety due to its treatment and take on of certain Islamic ideals. However, the Satanic Verses would remain a rather unknown work until in the 14th of February 1989, the Supreme Ayatollah and leader of Iran, Ruhollah Khomeini, issued a Fatwa, that's to say, a statement about an interpretation in a matter concerning Islam. And in it, he ordered Muslims to kill Rushdie for blasphemy against Islam due to having written and spread the Satanic Verses, and for having apostatized from Islam by having written it. Over the next few days, Iranian officials offered a bounty of $6 million for whoever would kill Rushdie, who was thus forced to live under police protection for the next 9 years, as this fatwa caused a lot of controversy and raised an uproar about Rushdie's work. This entire controversy would result in numerous killings and attempted killings and bombings in response to the controversy sparked by the novel and then later announcements of this fatwa against Rushdie. Some of these victims would include Hitoshi Igarashi, who translated the Satanic Verses into Japanese and was fatally stabbed at a university near Tokyo where he taught Islamic culture. And then you have the Norwegian publisher William Nygaard, who was shot in his home but survived. And in August 1989, a bomb was planted at a hotel in central London by Mustafa Mezi. However, the bomb went off
prematurely,
killing Mezi when he was setting up the explosive. And there has been numerous others. However, this is not the focus of this video, as the focus of this video is upon the context of the fatwa, or the interpretation, and why it was made as it was made by the Grand Ayatollah Khomeini in its context. It is important to realize that the work of the Satanic Verses was seen as a grave insult to Islam and as a continuation of the long tradition of anti-Islamic sentiment in the Western literature, portraying the core subject matter of the Prophet Muhammad and Islam in a derogatory manner. It also has to be remembered that during this age, there had only been a couple of decades since the last colonies ended in the Islamic world. So colonialism was still fresh in the memory. And the Satanic Verses did contain passages that were interpreted to be very offensive by a lot of people. This is not to support the attacks or anything like this. This is just stating a fact. For example, even more secular people in the Arabic world, such as Najib Mahfouz, the famous Egyptian author, called Salman Rushdie Mujrim, a criminal, in an article. But he also stated that the behavior and response of certain Muslims in regards to this controversy جعل من المجرم ضحية ومن الضحية متهما. That is to say, the behavior made the criminal the victim and the victim the accused. And Najib Mahfouz was a pretty secular person, and you see how he reacted to this. Then imagine how people that want the state to be Islamic would react in relation to the Satanic Verses. It should also be stated that blasphemy is strictly forbidden and punished by death in traditional Islamic ideas about Sharia, in both the Shia sect of Islam that Khomeini belonged to, and also in Sunni Islam, where all the major schools of interpreting the Sharia agree that the penalty is death. exemplified by Ibn Abi Zayd, who said, "Man sabba Rasulallah kutila wa la tuqbal tawbatuhu." Whoever abuses the messenger of God is to be executed, and his repentance is not accepted. And as you might understand, dear viewers, the Satanic Verses caused a lot of anger in the Islamic world when it became such a public thing through the Ayatollah making the official fatwa against Salman Rushdie. Outside of just following standards of interpretation when it comes to the Sharia or God's law, there ought to have been other reasons for this fatwa, as there has been worse blasphemers of Islam than Salman Rushdie before and after that have not received the same type of fatwas against them, especially as Salman Rushdie lived outside of the Islamic world, in Britain. No, I think the reason was to divide Muslims from the West by creating, or rather highlighting, a controversial issue that would lead to polarization and continue as a sort of warning against the aggressive West, as Khomeini had often warned Muslims of the dangers of the West as a dangerous, unbelieving power that threatened the faith of Islam. So it was part of a propaganda campaign, seeking to unite Muslims against the West as a common outer enemy to unite against, but primarily unite them behind Iran in support, and most importantly, to unite the Iranian people and to distract the attention of his Iranian countrymen from his capitulation 7 months earlier to a truce with Iraq on the 20th of July 1988, which was signing the ending of the long and bloody Iran-Iraq war. A truce that had been offered 6 years earlier, but then had been refused by the Grand Ayatollah, thus making the war drag on, causing more casualties than what would otherwise have been necessary. And remember, the Iran-Iraq war was a very bloody conflict that caused 500,000 deaths on the side of the Iranians. So Khomeini needed to distract his people from failing to achieve a great victory in the war and having to sign the same truce that he refused earlier, and to distract from the fact that a lot of sympathizers with the Iranian regime in Iraq were brutally executed directly after the signing of the truce by Saddam's forces, making Khomeini look even weaker. Worse still, the Iran-Iraq war had also alienated a lot of Sunnis, as Saddam was a Sunni, and the war was seen as a jihad against Sunni Islam by the Shia state of Iran in some circles. And Khomeini wanted to present Iran as a leader of the Muslim world, including the Sunnis, and the revolution in which he grabbed power in 1979 was presented as an Islamic revolution that was supposed to spread outside of just Iran and to unite both Shias and Sunnis in the propaganda, at least. And thus, declaring this fatwa against Rushdie could be seen as a ploy to win back the interest in and support for the Islamic revolution among the 90% of the population of the Muslim world that is Sunni rather than Shia like Khomeini. By presenting Iran as a strong defender of common Islamic values and ideals in condemning Salman Rushdie, they could earn or regain some support, especially in relationship to Iran's biggest rivals in the Middle East, that is to say Saudi Arabia and Turkey, especially as factions within Saudi Arabia had been successful in supporting the resistance against the Soviet army in Afghanistan during the Soviet-Afghan War, and thus had earned a lot of respect in the Muslim world. In comparison, Iran's attempts at inciting rebellions against the Soviet puppet government in the Soviet state of Azerbaijan had been met with failure, and had even drawn the ire of Turkey when there had been spillovers of militant groups and weapons financed by Iran from Azerbaijan going into Turkey, thus making the fatwa against Salman Rushdie could unite people behind Iran and let them regain some reputation in the Islamic world. And also that Khomeini could have had personal reasons, as the book The Satanic Verses does include an 11-page sketch of Khomeini's stay in Paris, where he stayed before returning to Iran, before the Iranian Revolution, that could well be considered an insult to him. And this is a probable reason as to why Salman Rushdie was specifically singled out. And as you can see, considering all the things I've gone through here, there was a lot of reasons that could have lied behind the announcement of the fatwa by Grand Ayatollah Khomeini, which might have led to the attack upon Salman Rushdie now in the year
2022.
More than 30 years after. But now, my viewers, I'm interested in knowing your opinions and your views and your questions with regards to this controversy and all of the matters and persons involved in it. Please post your comments in the comment section, and don't forget to like. Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities. اشترك بالقناة من فضلكم.